this edition of Southern Newsweek, 4 locals will be representing the country in the World Paralympic Games, and they have a good chance of winning gold. Our management of Syrian refugees is drawing attention from Parliament, but is it for all the right reasons? And a Dunedin man speaks to the United Nations about law reform within the National Drug Foundation. Kia ora, I'm Holly Buchanan. 4 local athletes are heading to Brazil to represent the country in this year's Paralympic Games. They're among just 6 New Zealanders selected for the national athletics team, which was officially announced in Dunedin recently. And they've got a good chance of winning gold.
Taking on the world. These top athletes are heading to Rio de Janeiro in about 100 days' time as the New Zealand Paralympic athletics squad for 2016. They're already ranked in the top 5 globally in their respective disciplines. Dunedin's Raylene Bates coaches many of them and believes she's backing winners, as even selection is hard to achieve.
These athletes travel to Australia quite often to get additional competition. They then actually have to wait and see how many slots they get allocated from the International Paralympic Committee. And how they allocate those slots is the gold and silver medalists from the world champs automatically get a slot.
He's only been training for about 18 months, but track runner Liam Malone is already attracting tough comparisons. He's affectionately known as New Zealand's Blade Runner, due to the physical similarities he shares with Paralympic gold medalist Oscar Pistorius.
As an athlete, we're born with the same congenital birth defect, similar amputations, our running styles are very similar. In that respect, we're very similar life experiences, both lost our mums very young.
Javelin thrower and 2012 Paralympian Holly Robinson grew up on the West Coast, but now calls Dunedin home. She's been living in the city since she was 16 years old and is currently ranked #1 in the world.
Yes, I'm pretty happy with it. I wanted to finish off my season, in that sort of area, #1. And it definitely bodes well for me moving into Rio for my goals. My goals are top 2 finish, so that's in a good place for me now. And it won't be easy. I've got some amazing athletes in my event.
Another local who's gained selection is shot putter and former Paralympian Jessica Hamill. She's joining fellow Dunedin track and field athletes Rory McSweeney and Anna Grimaldi in the team. The CEO of Paralympics New Zealand says Bates is one of the main reasons there's such strength in parasport in the south.
We've centralised the program based around the coach having been based here in Dunedin. And so therefore a number of athletes have made some really big decisions to come to Dunedin, study here to enable them to train and then represent New Zealand now at the Paralympic Games.
Rounding out the athletics squad is William Stedman. So far, no other Dunedin competitors have been selected for the Paralympics, although some teams have yet to be announced. Daryl Baser, 39, Dunedin News.
A new $50 million animal research facility is being built by the University of Otago. It's raising the hackles of animal lovers and welfare advocates, including the SPCA. But the university is open to talking with opponents.
Attracting opposition. The University of Otago's unveiling plans for a new 5-storey $50 million animal testing facility. That's angering people and organisations opposed to vivisection. The university's Deputy Vice-Chancellor in charge of research has been hearing some of their concerns.
In fact, I've been in contact with some of those groups, and I think the best thing for us to do is to talk to them face to face, and so we're going to have some private discussions with those groups to understand what their concerns are.
He says the university conducts testing on animals to set ethical guidelines, which is one thing he'll be discussing with concerned parties.
To give them some reassurance that we are doing this to fulfil our responsibilities to act at the highest ethical standards in what we do. So there's an Animal Welfare Act that we need to meet the requirements of, and we currently meet those requirements.
Professor Blakey says the university is already operating at a higher ethical standard than the Animal Welfare Act requires. He says the $50 million building will better accommodate animals and research involved in existing programs.
This is about animals that we maintain and breed colonies of, largely rodents, rats and mice, that will be used, you know, both for behavioural studies but also for medical studies, also as animals that our students can use for anatomical training and other parts of the teaching programs that we run.
Professor Blakey says the new building for animal research won't mean a ramping up of animal testing.
Not signalling that we are creating, have plans for creating large new programs of research or large new programs of teaching as a result of building a new facility.
The university's yet to reveal exactly where the new building will be located and when construction is due to begin. Daryl Baser, 39 Dunedin News.
The city's management of Syrian refugees is attracting political attention from the capital. The leader of the opposition has travelled south to speak with asylum seekers and the people assisting their integration into the community. And their stories are set to be heard in Parliament.
Checking in on progress, Labour leader Andrew Little and the party's local MPs have been talking to refugees and Red Cross staff about the city's resettlement process.
It's been really impressive hearing the stories and the commitment and dedication being shown by volunteers and by Red Cross staff, and really pleasing to see people are kind of enthusiastic and just doing whatever it takes to make it work.
Little was in the city yesterday visiting several institutions, including the University of Otago, where he spoke to political students. He also popped into the National Conservation Conference happening in the Dunedin Centre. It was a positive trip, particularly in relation to the newly settled Syrian refugees.
If the stories I've heard are anything to go by, you know, the kids are in schools, families are signed up to doctors, kids, you know, learning the English, and the adults now being signed up to English language classes. So it sounds like, you know, in the matter of a few weeks, the Dunedin Red Cross has really sort of got things going.
About a dozen extra staff have been employed at the local Red Cross branch to help the new refugees, as well as those due to arrive in coming months. Little says the Labour Party's keen to open the borders to more asylum seekers.
We think New Zealand can do more and should do more. We think we should double the quota. It's 750 at the moment. We know we can handle more than that. At the moment, the number of refugees we have entering New Zealand is a small fraction of the equivalent number, for example, going to Australia or Canada or even the UK.
He's planning on sharing what he's learned from this meeting in Dunedin with the country's leaders in Parliament. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
Conservation stakeholders from all over the country are gathering in Dunedin for a major conference. More than 150 delegates are attending the summit being hosted by the Yellow-Eyed Penguin Trust, and they're hoping to make a big difference nationally.
Brainstorming for the environment. Dozens of conservationists from throughout New Zealand are collaborating as part of a national conference. It's being hosted by the locally based Yellow-Eyed Penguin Trust.
We're addressing sort of social and financial issues for conservation or community conservation groups compared to the State Department of Conservation.
The summit is a sequel to one held in 2013 and is aiming to address major challenges in the country's conservation management. Funding models are changing and delegates are looking at ways the sector can benefit from greater collaboration between organisations and communities.
There are so many issues in New Zealand and so many threatened species, so many really good projects that need resourcing, and one could argue that competition is a little bit of a problem, but then equally it needs to be addressed because there is so many different issues that should be covered by the government.
The three-day conference involves keynote speeches from politicians, Māori leaders and Department of Conservation staff, as well as international experts. It's the largest event of its kind in New Zealand, comprising representatives from about 80 conservation groups and associated businesses.
Well, our goal is to bring these groups together to discuss these issues that are relevant to community-led conservation in today's environment and potentially seek collaborations or at least ways forward that will help each and every one of these conservation groups.
The number of associated organisations nationwide is increasing each year. These stakeholders are hoping to strengthen the work done by individual agencies for the common goal of environmental preservation. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
A leading drug policy analyst is calling for national reform. The University of Otago academic has been delivering his message on a world stage at the United Nations General Assembly, and he says it's high time for change.
Speaking to the world's leaders, Dunedin man Tuari Potiki has just been addressing the General Assembly of the United Nations in New York. The Director of Māori Development at the University of Otago was speaking in his role as Chairman of the New Zealand Drug Foundation.
It's huge, the room is huge. It's all of those countries, 100 and something countries all represented at a really high level. So it was a little bit daunting, but amazing. It was a fantastic experience, ultimately. It felt a lot better after I'd finished, of course.
Potiki spoke about the war on drugs during the last day of a 3-day special session. He says he was irritated with how some countries were behaving, so his speech ended up more blunt than political.
There were countries, like I said in the speech, like Russia, China, Iran, Indonesia, mostly countries who still have the death penalty for drug offences. And they were just trying to block everything. Any time anybody stood up and talked about progress, about using health approaches to try and help people with drug problems, they jump up and say no, no, no.
Now he's calling for a change to Aotearoa's 40-year-old drug policy, so widespread issues can be addressed throughout the country. He wants to see a health-based approach to tackling problems, away from the criminal justice system. Potiki says the UN experience is one he'll never forget, and it's armed him for the fight to reform drug laws on home turf. Daryl Baser, 39, Dunedin News.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek, a local academic calls for a clean-up after an in-depth study reveals some harsh truths about commercial fishing. And we find out why our hospice needs $400,000. Commercial fishing needs to be cleaned up, according to a local professor, following the most comprehensive study of the sector to date. It's been revealed that actual catch is almost 3 times more than what's officially being reported. But that's come as no surprise to those who know the industry.
Getting a handle on an epic problem. This local researchers calling for action following stark revelations about New Zealand's commercial fishing industry.
If you reconstruct the New Zealand's fisheries catch from 1950 to 2012, it's roughly 2.7 times higher than was previously thought. So it's a big deal.
The study involved analysis by academics and industry experts throughout New Zealand and overseas. It makes for concerning reading.
It's absolutely routine for good fish to be dumped, particularly if it's the wrong size or perhaps not in the best condition. It just goes over the side.
Opposition parties are urging the government to clamp down on commercial fishing practices. Labour's also calling for an independent inquiry into illegal fish dumping. Professor Dawson says the findings come as no surprise.
It's something that we've known about for years and years and years, and what this report has done is it's really put numbers to it, and it's really formalised the nature of the problem.
He says the quota management system creates unfortunate incentives, making sense for fishermen to throw back all but the best fish.
And I'm hoping the kinds of change that will happen will address these fundamental incentive problems within the quota management system, so that we give fishermen more ownership of local areas, so that they have some incentive to conserve that resource.
He says it's easy to blame fishermen, but their behaviour is a result of the industry and how it's managed. Stakeholders are now looking to the government to see what, if any, changes will ensue. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
New Zealand Music Month is drawing to a close, but some in the industry believe the 16th year should be its last. A local music retailer says the promotional initiative is no longer working, and he's seeing a change in consumer preferences.
Forget about New Zealand Music Month, how about New Zealand Music Year? That's the message from Two Tone Records proprietor Tony Renouf. He says the event doesn't make much difference at all to the amount of New Zealand music he sells.
Very little. I don't really see any ups and downs during the year as far as selling New Zealand music. I specialise in second-hand New Zealand vinyl, so people will come to me outside of May and seeking New Zealand music.
Renouf thinks the people behind the annual initiative aren't in touch with industry professionals like himself at the coalface of local music retail.
To be honest, I received 8 A1 posters the same size as this one this year and 8 A3 posters to display in my shop, and to be honest, I barely have space for the one that I have up. It just seems to me that whoever's sending them out is possibly a little disconnected with what's actually going on in music retail here in Dunedin.
Some rare and early pressings of New Zealand music records fetch hundreds of dollars as they're hard to find. Renouf says modern technology is making it easier to judge what a record is worth.
Now with the internet than it was previously, when you really only had maybe 1 or 2 reliable guides to price. Now there's at least 3 sites that I use to judge pricing of stuff.
He says while many people are listening to compressed music digitally, there's an appetite for more traditional sounds.
I've noticed a resurgence in vinyl, which is a healthy resurgence in vinyl, because there's certainly a lot of stuff that was being sidelined because it was only available, or it was available on too readily on CD. A lot of people are coming back, and a lot of people are exclaiming that they are experiencing a warmer, fuller listening experience from listening to vinyl.
New Zealand Music Month comes to a close on May the 31st, the way it began locally, with performances at the Central Public Library. Daryl Baser, 39, Dunedin News.
The Otago Community Hospice needs to raise around $400,000 by the end of the tax year in just 6 weeks' time. It's benefiting from a charity fashion show incorporating some of the world's most fabulous couture, and donations are also being sought through other means.
Simply stunning fashion for a most worthy cause. Darnell Collection curator Charlotte Smith has been putting the finishing touches on a model's outfit ahead of tonight's fundraising fashion show. She selected a range of clothes from the 1960s to the 1990s to display, taking many factors into account.
I chose things that either had a connection with New Zealand. I've got sort of a Scottish tartan, as you can see behind us, with Dunedin. I have a couple of New Zealand design dresses from the 60s and 70s. And then I brought a few pieces that I thought showcase glamour and, empowering women and feeling great wearing something wonderful.
Smith's based in the United States and is in Dunedin along with some of her vintage garments, supporting the Otago Community Hospice during its Appeal and Awareness Week. She says all of the outfits are being revealed to Dunedin residents for the first time.
No, nothing that I'm bringing to this special parade has been seen before at all. And there are actually some dresses that I've never actually seen on a person before. I mean, many pieces in my collection are only for exhibitions, so they go on, static, standard fiberglass mannequins. And then other pieces I allow people to wear.
She says before this show, there were some pieces she hadn't even unpacked. Lynn Chapman of the local hospice says demand for services has been growing fast over the past few years, so events like this help greatly.
This week we're hoping to raise about $60,000, but as you can be probably very aware that we have to raise $1.8 million for the whole year. We have a shortfall at the moment of $340,000, so we're working very hard in lots of different areas of fundraising to make sure that we don't finish the financial year with a shortfall.
Chapman says the pressure is on, particularly as more people are becoming aware of the hospice services. Charlotte Smith is hoping the show brings a smile to ticket holders' faces.
When you're not well, you're recovering, you certainly when you have sickness issues, feeling great is a very important part of recovery.
Collectors will be in town tomorrow for the hospice's annual street appeal. Daryl Baser, 39, Dunedin News.
And just ahead on Southern Newsweek, a rare breed of kiwi makes Otakanui its home, And we'll find out how thousands of residents have become part of an art installation. Six more Kiwi chicks are settling into the confines of the Orokonui Eco Sanctuary. The Kiwi chicks from Christchurch were released into the Dunedin Reserve recently by staff and members of the public. They are among the most rare breed of Kiwi. Already the Eco Sanctuary above Port Chalmers is home to many Kiwi and other native birds. The chicks will be spending a few months inside the semi-wild facility
So just go back one sentence.
Okay, cool. The chicks will be spending a few months inside the semi-wild facility before being transported to predator-free islands where they will be released. Only 5% of Kiwi chicks survive in the wild. Anti-bullying groups are raising awareness about the issue in conjunction with a global movement. Pink Shirt Day events have been happening around the world in recognition of a 2007 attack on a Canadian teenager. And despite a lack of pink being worn locally, it seems the message is getting across.
Asking people to intervene. Anti-bullying campaigners in the city have been sparking debate in public for Pink Shirt Day. The Bail on Bullying crew were putting some tough questions to students and engaging them in discussion about what's happening locally.
So having a youth-led organisation is really unique. It's peer-to-peer interactions, it's peer-to-peer messages, and that's what shows to work.
He says with mobile technology, bullying doesn't stop at the school gate, and initiatives like Pink Shirt Day can help.
Yes, I think that days like Pink Shirt Day is about awareness. People will see pink, people will wonder why are they wearing pink, why am I seeing pink everywhere today? They'll find out it's about bullying. It's about awareness so people can help others.
Tan Felton of Stopping Violence Dunedin is working with the Bail on Bullying crew. She says Pink Shirt Day is good for highlighting issues around bullying and letting people know that they can and should intervene.
It's super important. You know, bullying's massive in, I think, every country, and the sooner we can get people to acknowledge that it's a problem in their homes, in the schools, in the community, then we can start working with the people that need help around that. And that might be the victim, it might be the bully, or it might be someone that doesn't know what to do around bullying.
Bail on Bullying members may be favouring the traditional black Dunedin colour scheme, but their message is the same as that of pink shirt proponents, that bullying is not okay. Daryl Baser, 39, Dunedin News.
A wayward drug-making University of Otago student is the central character in this year's capping show. It's the institution's 122nd annual review, and directors are ensuring it's equally funny and offensive.
Taking student struggles to the stage, the city's tertiary scene is being exposed and somewhat ridiculed during this year's Otago University Students Association capping show.
It's students writing and performing sketch comedy which is relevant to students, I guess.
Mixed in with some music, some songs by Sextet and Sexitet and the band. And then the Selwyn Ballet, of course, is another traditional aspect of capping show.
Rose and McGrath got involved in the annual event in 2014 as actors, despite not knowing what a capping show was. They were assistant directors last year and are now taking the hot seat. This year's theme is based on popular television series Breaking Bad, with a making grad twist.
A student who's been at university for a long time gets kicked out because he's a useless student and has to find a way to pay back a whole bunch of money that he's owed to the government. So he decides to start selling drugs as opposed to having cancer.
And then it's just the story of how, what happens next? What does the proctor do?
The show's heavy with parody and puns in style with the traditional comedic nature of such reviews. Many different students are involved, and not just those interested in theatre or music.
They've got no acting experience in the first place, or definitely no acting experience like capping show, because it's its own sort of brand. And that's really cool seeing them come in, and then you can tell they've got like natural confidence, and they seem funny, so you're like, well, let's put them on stage and see what happens, essentially. Yeah.
The show opened a week ago and closes on Saturday. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
And finally, thousands of residents are contributing to a unique installation at the Dunedin Public Art Gallery. A work by a Japanese artist is allowing visitors to indulge their creativity while viewing the exhibition. And the fun isn't over.
Creating colour in a whitewashed room. Visitors to the Dunedin Public Art Gallery have been engaging in its latest exhibit.
This is an interactive installation by the Japanese artist Yayoi Kusama, who's someone who's been active in the art world for many decades. She's nearly 90, I think, so she's been doing these kinds of works for a long time.
People viewing the obliteration room are given a sheet of circular stickers to cover objects set up inside. The work's local installation started off looking like this and has rapidly evolved.
We've had something like 17,000 visitors to the exhibition in the last 2 weeks. So it's really captured people's imagination.
There doesn't look like much room left to sticker, but there are still a couple of months for residents to get involved before the installation closes in early August. It's the first time the Japanese artist's work has been shown at the gallery, and staff are hoping it won't be the last.
We have borrowed the work from the Queensland Art Gallery. This is part of their collection, and so we've worked with the Queensland Art Gallery and the artist's studio in Japan to source the stickers.
The size, shape and colour of the stickers was specified by the artist. About 50,000 sheets of them were printed in Europe for the Dunedin exhibition. McCracken says interaction is one of many components of a successful art program, and the public's been responding well to this opportunity.
It captures people's imagination. They are so they understand inherently what to do. You know, we don't need to tell people what to do. They know.
The obliteration room is closing on the 7th of August. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
And that's all for this edition of Southern Newsweek. Remember to check us out on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, or you can take a look at our website at dunedintv.co.nz. I'm Holly Buchanan. Thanks for watching.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.